In Episode 1, titled Navigate the FedRAMP Landscape, we start by drawing a clean, working map of who is involved and how work actually moves through the program today. The Federal Risk and Authorization Management Program, FedRAMP, can feel like a dense forest of roles, forms, and checkpoints. A map quiets the noise and shows the trails you need to follow. We will sketch the players, the documents, and the decision points so the overall picture becomes legible, even if you are new to federal cloud authorization. The aim is practical orientation, where you stand, where you can go next, and which path gets you there with the fewest surprises. With that intention set, we begin by naming the purpose of the program and why it remains the federal government's standard approach to assessing and authorizing cloud services. The heart of the program's purpose is straightforward. FedRAMP provides a standardized, repeatable security assessment and authorization framework for cloud services used by federal agencies. Standardization matters because without it, each agency would assess the same product differently, wasting effort and leaving uneven risk acceptance across the government. The model creates a common baseline, a shared vocabulary, and comparable evidence so agencies can make decisions with confidence and reuse prior work. In daily terms, this means a cloud service provider, often shortened after first mention to CSP, has a single, rigorous security story that can satisfy many agencies rather than reinventing it for each conversation. That reduces friction for agencies, clarifies expectations for providers, and concentrates investment in controls and monitoring rather than negotiation and paperwork churn. There are two established authorization routes, and clarity on these routes shapes everything else you will do. One route is through the Joint Authorization Board, JAB, which can grant a provisional authorization to operate, PATO, that agencies may then leverage. The other route is through a single agency that issues an authorization to operate, ATO, for its own use. The JAB path is competitive, capacity limited, and generally focused on services with broad government-wide demand. The agency path is flexible, pursued with a specific sponsor, and often faster to initial authorization when a motivated customer exists. Both routes demand the same disciplined control implementation and evidence, but the decision cadence, stakeholder mix, and review dynamics differ. Choosing wisely here conserves time and gives you a sponsorship model aligned to your market reality. It helps to meet the core stakeholders you will encounter. The FedRAMP Program Management Office, PMO, provides program guidance, manages the marketplace, issues templates, and coordinates policy updates that keep the standard aligned with federal requirements. The Joint Authorization Board, or JAB, after first mention, is composed of representatives from key agencies and serves as the central body evaluating candidates for a PATO. Individual federal agencies act as customers and authorizing officials in the agency path, weighing mission fit and risk acceptance for their environments. The cloud service provider, or CSP on first mention, owns the product boundary, implements the controls, and maintains evidence across the lifecycle. And an accredited third-party assessment organization, 3PAO, performs the independent assessment, producing the formal report set that underpins authorization decisions. Know these roles and you can predict who asks which questions and when. Before you can run, you need the documents that carry the weight of the decision. The System Security Plan, SSP, is the narrative and technical blueprint explaining the boundary, the inherited and implemented controls, and the procedures that make those controls real. The Security Assessment Report, SAR, captures the independent testing results from the 3PAO, translating observed evidence into findings and risks. The Plan of Action and Milestones, often pronounced POA and M, tracks every identified weakness and the committed remediation path with dates and owners. And the Authorization to Operate letter, the ATO letter, after first use of the term, records the authorizing official's decision and any conditions placed on that approval. These artifacts travel with you, improve with each cycle, and serve as the common currency agencies use to understand your risk posture. Viewed end-to-end, the life cycle follows a clear rhythm with 4 phases that repeat as long as the service remains authorized. Readiness is where the CSP finalizes the boundary, closes obvious gaps, and confirms that documentation and evidence quality are assessment-ready. Assessment is the independent evaluation by the 3PAO, who tests, samples, and reviews configurations and processes to produce the SAR and populate the POA and M. Authorization is the decision step, where the JAB or the agency's authorizing official weighs the evidence, the risk posture, and any conditions to issue a PATO or an ATO. Continuous monitoring is the lived reality after authorization, where monthly, quarterly, and annual activities sustain compliance, address new findings, and document the evolving risk picture. 4 phases, 1 cadence, and a lot less mystery once you see how the work cycles. Consider a concrete example that many teams face. A software-as-a-service provider pursues an agency ATO with a deliberate reuse strategy. The CSP identifies a motivated mission customer with a defined need, aligns the product boundary to the functions that customer will actually use, and selects a hosting substrate that already carries FedRAMP authorization for inherited controls. The 3PAO assessment focuses on the CSP's implementation, integrations, and operational processes, while explicitly acknowledging inherited protections from the underlying platform. After the first agency issues an ATO, the CSP curates the SSP, SAR, and POA&M to emphasize reusability, making it easier for a second and third agency to understand the product and leverage the existing work. That is reuse in action, one strong evidence set serving multiple decisions efficiently. A common trap appears early and quietly, underestimating boundary scoping and the planning for inherited controls. If the boundary is blurry, your SSP becomes a patchwork of exceptions, and your assessment becomes a tour of missing lines. Clear scope means naming exactly which components, data flows, administrative interfaces, and integrations are in. It also means specifying what you are inheriting and from whom. Inherited controls only help when they are traceable to an authorized provider with current continuous monitoring and when your implementation actually uses their protective features as designed. The antidote is methodical mapping before writing. Enumerate components, draw data paths, tag trust zones, and record where each control's enforcement truly lives. Time spent here converts later confusion into clean evidence and reduces rework during assessment. On the positive side, one early win consistently repays the effort. Align with marketplace demand before committing to a pathway. If your service fills a cross-government need and can meet the scale and documentation maturity expected by the JAB, the PAT route can unlock wide reuse. If your opportunity centers on a particular mission owner ready to sponsor and consume your service, the agency path delivers momentum and proof. Talk to potential agency customers, study the published marketplace, and compare your service to peers that have succeeded on each route. This small dose of market research anchors the decision in reality and prevents aspirational choices that drain resources. Picking the path that matches demand is not only strategic, it is kind to your team and to your earliest federal adopters. To make the dynamics more tangible, picture a kickoff call that includes the PMO, your chosen 3PAO, and your internal leads for product, security, and operations. The PMO voice frames expectations, follow program templates, maintain evidence quality, and plan realistically for assessment and authorization milestones. The 3PAO describes sampling strategies, evidence windows, and how interviews and demonstrations will confirm control operation. Your team explains the boundary, the hosting platform, and where inherited controls from your infrastructure provider will be leveraged. Action items land. Finalize the SSP sections that describe data flow and administrative access, validate that vulnerability management cadence matches program requirements, and ensure ticketing and logging systems can produce samples on request. A well-run kickoff sets tone and tempo. It also reinforces that assessment is collaborative and evidence-driven, not adversarial. There is a neat phrase that condenses the mental model and sticks. 4 phases, 2 paths, 3 documents. The 4 phases, readiness, assessment, authorization, and continuous monitoring, keep you oriented no matter where you stand. The 2 paths, JAB with a PATO or an agency with an ATO, frame sponsorship and decision style. The 3 documents, the SSP, the SAR, and the POA&M, carry the substance of your story and the proof behind it. When a meeting gets complicated or a question spirals into subdetails, you can return to this phrase and ask which phase you are in, which path you are on, and which document needs to be stronger. Simple anchors prevent drift, especially when the project stretches across months. A quick mental recap exercise keeps everyone aligned. Who authorizes, what documents matter, and which lifecycle phase you are actually in today.
If authorization belongs to the JAB or to a particular agency's authorizing official, your stakeholder management plan changes accordingly. If the SSP is thin on boundary clarity, the SAR will inevitably contain more findings than you want, and the POA and M will become a parking lot that delays decisions. If you think you are in authorization, but your evidence cadence still looks like readiness, you will frustrate reviewers who expect final, not draft material. This speed check takes 1 minute in a stand-up and saves hours later by preventing teams from working at cross purposes or talking past each other.
Because the program evolves, staying current with policy updates and baseline revisions is not optional. The FedRAMP PMO publishes updated templates, clarifications, and control baseline adjustments that track changes in federal requirements and emerging risks. When baselines shift, inherited platforms update their controls, and your own control narratives and test evidence must keep pace to remain accurate. Treat policy surveillance as a part of continuous monitoring. Assign ownership, set a review cadence, and document how you evaluate and adopt changes. When a reviewer asks how you handled a newly revised control or a clarified parameter, being able to show the date you noticed, the decision you recorded, and the evidence you updated builds trust and keeps authorization current rather than stale on arrival. Under the surface, the operational discipline behind continuous monitoring is what sustains authorization over time. Monthly vulnerability scans, timely patch metrics, incident reporting, account review artifacts, and refreshed inventories are not administrative chores. They are the living proof that the control environment continues to operate as described. Tie each required activity to a system of record, make sampling easy, and annotate exceptions with dates and owners so the narrative never relies on memory. When the next annual assessment arrives, your SAR becomes a snapshot of a moving, well-documented system rather than a scramble to reconstruct a year's worth of actions. That posture shortens cycles, reduces surprises, and makes reuse by additional agencies more likely because confidence accumulates with every clean check. Returning to the example, the SAS team seeking an agency ATO uses reuse as a design constraint rather than an afterthought. They compose the SSP with clear dependency mapping to an authorized hosting platform, cross-reference inherited control identifiers, and keep configuration baselines and diagrams versioned and dated. Their 3PAO plan anticipates secondary agency reviewers and organizes test outputs so another authorizing official can quickly understand scope, evidence quality, and residual risk. After the first ATO, the team curates a consumable package that includes the SSP, recent continuous monitoring artifacts, a clean POA&M, and a concise changelog. Each subsequent agency conversation benefits from this discipline because the decision-maker sees continuity, not one-off heroics. Reuse succeeds when clarity and maintenance are built in from the start. Even with strong process, you will encounter pressure points, most often where technology choices and control interpretations meet. Boundary edges around shared services, third-party integrations, or administrative tooling can challenge even experienced teams. The practical move is to resolve ambiguity with concrete artifacts, updated data flow diagrams, configuration excerpts, and access control listings annotated to show enforcement points. When debate arises, draw a straight line from the control requirement to the actor, the action, and the recorded outcome. That style is durable across reviewers because it replaces assertion with verifiable evidence and respects that risk decisions live on the quality of the record more than on the charisma of the explanation. Over time, this habit becomes your house style and pays dividends in every assessment. If you are choosing between the JAB and agency paths, return to demand and readiness as your twin guides. Demand asks where your earliest and strongest federal need sits. Readiness asks whether your documentation, engineering discipline, and evidence systems can satisfy the particular expectations of the path. JAB selection favors products with broad applicability and mature documentation from day one. Agency sponsorship favors clear mission fit and strong customer advocacy even if polish grows during the journey. There is no stigma in either choice. The error is to chase a path that does not match your conditions, then discover the mismatch halfway through. Decide early, commit to the path's rhythm, and set your team's calendar to the meetings and artifacts that path requires. To consolidate the picture, hold the sticky phrase and the recap together. 4 phases, 2 paths, 3 documents. Who authorizes, what documents, which phase. These are not slogans. They are cognitive handles to keep everyone moving in parallel.
When a partner asks where you are, answer with the phase. When leadership asks about risk, answer with the documents and their current state. When a prospective agency customer asks how they could leverage the work, answer with the path and what reuse looks like in practical terms. Keep your language concrete and your artifacts tidy, and the program's complexity will compress into a manageable set of routines that teams can repeat without burning out.
We close where we began, with the map. You have seen the program's purpose, the 2 authorization routes, the key stakeholders, the foundational artifacts, and the life cycle that powers initial approval and continuous monitoring. Capture today's map while it is fresh. Name your likely path, list your stakeholders by role, confirm your document owners, and note which phase you occupy right now. Your next action can be modest and still meaningful. Sketch your own boundary and inherited controls plan on a single page, then validate it with your 3PAO and your agency or JBAB counterparts. A clear map invites steady movement, and steady movement is how teams reach authorization and sustain it with confidence. Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.